With astounding agility, the Spike Rider Lancers whirl above the battlefield before diving into a sudden and devastating charge. Their souls entwined with Alariel's song, only a single mighty blow can hope to overcome them. And in this video, we're going to be showing you how to paint a Spike Rider Lancer. Using a mixture of the classic and contrast methods, we'll be painting this model to a battle-ready standard. Now, the first thing we need to do is undercoat the model, and to do this, we've chosen to use grey cere. Then we'll begin our base coats, using Morghast bone and Stegodon scale green for the Spike Rider details. After that, it'll be Wildwood and Mournfang brown for the brown details. So I'm going to take some Morghast bone here onto the palette and thin it down with some water. Now for this, I'm going to pick out the dragon spike skin. So very carefully, just picking that out there. With all that skin picked out, we're now going to use Stegodon scale green for the rest of the dragon spite. We're also going to use this on the wing spines of the model. You might need to build it up over a couple of thin layers. The next thing we're going to do is use Wildwood straight from the pot for the bark. With the bark done, we're now using Mournfang brown to pick out the claws and any other brown details. And with all those brown details picked out, including the strap on the inside of the shield, we can move on to the rest of our base coats. So we're going to start off with Blue Horror for all those pale blue details. Then it'll be Aethematic Blue for the wings, Nazdrag Yellow for the Lamantiri, and finally Lauren Forest for the leaves. So I'm going to take some Blue Horror here onto the palette and thin it down with some water. We want this to be quite thin. Then I'm going to apply that all over the skin of the model. We're also going to use it to pick out the hair, the blade, and the inside of the shield. Now we're using Aethematic Blue for the wings. I'm using a medium shade brush for this just to help avoid any brush strokes. With that done, we're now going to use Nazdrag Yellow on the Lamantiri. I'm using a small layer brush for this. Be as neat as you can, but if you do make any mistakes, you can always just tidy back up with Blue Horror. Now we're going to pick out the leaves using Lauren Forest. With all those base coats done, we can now move on to applying shades and contrast. So we're going to use Norn Oil for those darker blue areas of the dragon spite, followed by Aethematic Blue for some of those paler blue areas. So I'm going to take some Norn Oil here onto the palette, just so that I can control how much is on my brush. Then I'm going to roll my brush up to a point, and I'm going to apply that over those darker blue areas. On the tail of the dragon spike, we're going to apply this as a recess wash. This means just going into the recesses of the miniature. Now we're going to apply Aethematic Blue on some of those paler blue details. So this is places like the shield, the weapon, the helmet, and the hair. And with that done, we can now move on to the rest of our contrast. So we're going to start with Aethematic Blue, and this time thin it down with contrast medium for the skin of the Sylvaneth. Then we'll be using Skeleton Horde for the skin of the dragon spite, followed by Wildwood, thin down with contrast medium for those brown areas, and finally Gryph-hound Orange for those dragon spite eyes. So I'm going to take 2 parts contrast medium onto the palette, quick rinse of my brush and dry it off, and then 1 part Aethematic Blue. Mix that together there. Roll my brush up to a point, and then I'm going to apply that onto the skin of the Sylvaneth. Now we're going to use Skeleton Horde straight from the pot on that dragon spite skin. now we're using wildwood thinned down with contrast medium on those other brown areas. And for this we've used 2 parts contrast medium to 1 part wildwood. As you can see, we've just picked the eyes back out using grey cere, and now we're going to apply Gryph-hound orange over them. And with that done, we can now move on to picking out that gemstone on the helmet. For this, we're going to use Soulstone Blue. So I'm going to take a little bit and just put some on the palette so I've not got too much on my brush. Roll it up to a point, and then I'm going to apply that onto that gemstone. And with that gemstone picked out, we can now move on to basing the miniature. So for this, we're going to use sterling mud as our texture and then apply warp lightning all over it to give it a different tone. So I'm going to use my texture tool and use the large side to scoop out some sterling mud. Then I'm going to apply that all over the base of the miniature. Now we're going to apply warp lightning all over that texture. I'm using a medium shade brush for this. Now all that's left to do is to paint the rim of the base in a colour that matches the rest of your army. In this case we've used Steel Legion Drab. And now our Spite Rider Lancer is finished to a battle-ready standard, ready to serve at the direct behest of the Ever Queen herself. So just a couple of things to remember. When you're base coating, be as neat as possible, as this does provide a better end result. However, if you do make any mistakes, you can always just easily tidy back up after. Also, when you're using shades and contrast, be careful not to overload your brush, as it can quickly run out of control on the miniature. However, if this does happen, just wash off your brush and use it to soak up the excess. Well, that's the end of the video. We hope you've enjoyed watching, and we hope you have great fun painting your own miniatures. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!